Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost. It's Friday. So, of course, we're here. It's Friday. It's the 111th consecutive True Community Gathering. We've been doing it since April 17th, 2020. It was in response to something I think some of you may have heard of called pandemic. Uh, and we were all told that we had to go into shutdown on March 15th, I think, was when we closed down. Just a few days after my birthday and a few days after the last Broadway show I saw at that time, which was Come From Away, which was amazing. But thank God I was in a crowded theater and I got out safe because who knew what we were getting into? We thought that shutdown was something that would be a couple weeks or a month, maybe. We thought it would end Labor Day, Memorial Day, 4th of July. We had all these dates, and Trump was sort of teasing us along with dates when it was going to end. So it's two and a half years later, and we are out of shutdown. Yes, we are. That's the good news. The bad news is, since we've been sort of out of shutdown, and even though I'm vaccinated and double boosted and always wear a mask, I've actually gotten COVID twice. So COVID's still with us. It's still here. So everybody, I encourage you to continue being cautious, taking care of yourself, not only for your own sake, but for the sake of others, because this COVID thing is just crazy. I did nothing to get this to get it, and I wound up getting it twice. I was isolated. I don't know how it happened, but I don't want it to happen again. The good news about that is that I wasn't all that sick, so we're grateful about that. But here we are. We went through. I mean, let's face it, guys. Have you ever in your lifetime had as big a change in your life as what happened when we went into shutdown in March of 2020? That was huge. It was just huge. It shut a lot of us down personally, as well as shutting down the country physically. A lot of us didn't know how to cope, which is why I started this Friday gathering, actually. It's why we come together every Friday at 5 o'clock, and we'll continue coming together every Friday at 5 o'clock to create a community in a time when, God, a lot of us were feeling very isolated and didn't know what to do. Now that we're coming back into live theater and live performance, we do feel some things that are familiar about the world again. Things that happen today politically are not particularly comfortable for a lot of us and not particularly happy for a lot of us. But I want to talk to a couple people today, some friends of mine who dealt with COVID in their very specific ways. These are people that are very successful in theater in many ways. They've done tons of successful theater as artistic directors and choreographers, and they've worked in the business. And COVID sent them a message. COVID whispered in their ear and said, maybe you should try something different right now. So let's talk about what the difference is and what specifically inspired my three friends to make this change. And they all started new business endeavors in the past couple months, I think. But you can correct me if I got some of the details wrong. So I'm going to bring JV Mercanti, Chad Austin, and James Rocco into the room. And hi, welcome to True. Good to have you as guests. Great to have you as friends.
Thanks for having us, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. Hi, everybody.
Just so everybody knows, JV and Chad have partnered in a new venture. One of you want to jump in and just, you know what? Let's do the individual thing first. Let me meet you each individually. Talk about where you've been, what you've been doing, and what were the things that came into your life that finally led you to make a decision and say, I'm going to start a new business. Why not? I'm going to start a new business. Let's start with James.
Oh, with me? Okay. Well, I think some of you may know this about me. I've been working professionally in the business since I was a child. I joined Equity in 1969 to join the tour of Oliver. And I have been working as a singer, an actor, a writer, a producer, a consultant, an artistic director, but most frequently as a director. I've directed over 200 productions, primarily in major regional theaters, but also in New York on and off Broadway. And I have worked all over the world. And I know the business, and I love the business, and I love to work. So when the pandemic hit, I literally was working at the Fifth Avenue Theater, came home in Seattle, came home to St. Paul for the weekend. And I have to say, it's been a very long weekend. It was like 2 years. I immediately started thinking of things to do. The first thing I did was I started making videos with friends with cell phones that I would do hashtag nothing can stop live theater, and I would post them on YouTube, and they got a lot of play. I directed a lot of online readings. I did one with Chad at the Abingdon. It was wonderful. I was lucky to be able to do that sort of thing. It was great. But, none of us were making any money. And I thought, what else can I do? I have to create something. And I started thinking, I have all these shows that I've written that have some pre-existing material. And I thought, why don't I start checking and seeing, if I need to renew any licenses. And so I started doing music licensing for myself. And I started renewing the licenses for the shows that I had written, and I really loved it. I've always been a music nut. I sort of a music historian. I know a lot about the music of the 20th century and the 21st century, not just musicals, but pop music. So I started loving this because some of the songs weren't even represented by publishers. So I had to dig up the families of the people who wrote these songs, and I started loving it. P.S. Roger Bean from Stage Rights Publishing, one of my shows was with him, and he discovered that I was doing this. And he said, can you help? The guy who's been doing my clearance work is retiring. Can you help me? And the next thing I knew, I had done the clearances and licensing for 15 of Roger's shows. And I've learned a lot about the licensing business. I love it. It also helps me, I can continue to do my directing work and my consulting work. In fact, last week I was finally back at the Fifth Avenue Theater. And I'm going back Monday again. But I'm able to bring this work with me, and I'm able to help other artists, which is kind of what my whole career has been about. I've tried to be a door opener, and really, right now, that's what's happening in our industry. Things are changing, and I'm ecstatic about it. And I want to be able to make that possible for people. So,
okay, James, we're going to talk more about the specifics of what's involved in music licensing, because not everybody in the room really is as familiar with it as you are. Some things that may seem obvious we're going to talk about too. But let's meet JV, because I don't know you yet. So let me meet you.
Hi, Bob. Thanks, James. That was really interesting. Hi, everybody. This is my first time to True. I am usually in Brooklyn, but I am in a spare bedroom at my parents' house in South Jersey right now. I'm a full-time director and professor. And Chad and I met a few years ago. He was the associate producer on Jesus Christ Superstar Live, and I was the associate director of Jesus Christ Superstar Live. And that brought a great friendship together. And then, as you so eloquently spoke of, because I'm a professor, we very quickly switched to Zoom in March of that first part of the pandemic, producing our works on Zoom, teaching classes on Zoom. And Chad very quickly switched to producing theater on Zoom, live theater. And we got together and we talked about starting this company called the 29-Hour Venture, because so many people, I think like you just talked about, and so many people in this room right now, were taking classes and started writing musicals and starting writing plays and getting very serious about trying to get that work workshopped and produced. And Chad and I wanted to create a space for people to do that. We had our first workshop this week, and it was smashing.
Okay, well, so we got a little bit of background on you, and let's go to
Bravo.
Chad. What and then we'll talk more about your company. So Chad, who are you, Chad? What have you been doing for the last 20 years?
20 years, nobody wants to hear that. Hi, Bob. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jamie, James. Hi, everybody. Hi, Jane, Janelle, everyone at True. Thanks for having me again here. It's a pleasure, and thank you for helping spotlight our new business and Jamie's new business. So I am Chad Austin. I am currently Artistic Director of Abingdon Theatre Company, entering my 5th season as AD as we enter our 30th season producing off-Broadway.
I just want to insert that you also were an actor, if you aren't still, and that you were one of the most wonderful actors I've ever had in one of my plays. You just did a terrific job in my play. I'll never forget that. And so that goes back to another company you were involved in, which is Tossos too.
Yeah, and I was an actor many years ago. I believe that was 20 years ago.
Well, I said 20 years.
Yeah, no longer, but yeah, it's still a part of me, and I think that I sort of attack everything from the actor's vision a lot as well. So thank you for saying that, Bob. Thanks for sharing that as well.
I had to get it in. I loved doing I'll never forget. It was it was so magical. When a playwright sees his work done that well, it's just magical.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about more about Abingdon and what you've been doing. How long have you been with Abingdon?
Since 2016, and then as associate AD, and then in 2018, I took over as AD.
You know, Abington's gone through a lot of transformations over the past 20 years. I've known Abington since the founders were, it's Jan and Pam. No, it's Jan and Pam.
You're right.
Yeah, I knew it then. And so, just curious, what was Abington when you came in, and have you done anything that's changed it since you've been the artistic director?
Ooh,
I want to pull that in even before we get to your new venture.
Sure. You know, I think Abingdon had a wonderful foundation when I came in, and I certainly didn't come in with the intention of trying to change it, but I did come in with a certain intention for it to grow. So I think if I could answer. Somebody that's not muted, Bob.
I found it. It was Michael Cohen.
If I could answer that question as honestly as possible, I would say that I have grown Abingdon for the reach to be a little bit more than it used to be, and for the artistic vision to stretch a bit farther than it did for previous years.
So I'm going to tag team the two of you, since you both do the company together, JV and Chad. Talk about how you started, why you started, when you started your new venture. How new is it?
Well, like JV said, we just had our first reading this week. It was Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And we came up, JV can correct me here, but we sort of were spitfiring ideas. We both actually had this sort of dream to do this separately. Honest, that's the truth. And the reason for me, and then I'll let JV speak, is that I certainly saw a need for people that were coming to me and wanted to produce their work, wanted to do a reading of their work, wanted to get their work started, wanted people to see their work, but they didn't have any resources. You know, they weren't true members who, you know, you offer so many resources and classes. So they were really coming with a lack of knowledge, and I wanted to be able to help people. And I also wanted people to be able to go to, and this is what I think makes us different from a lot of companies that may offer something. I wanted you to be able to come to a company that was a one-stop shop, if you will. Because of JV and myself, our history, we have development history. JV worked in casting, you know, we have general management. So opposed to sort of having to get a producer and then a GM and so, we can sort of take care of, well, the goal is to take care of everything for you Or if you've got all those things lined up and you just need help with the GM portion or, you know, the casting portion, we can also take care of those things. But again, for my part, it was really for a need to open up doors for people and to not say no to everyone constantly.
Not saying no to everyone. So, I mean, you've had a lot of people asking you for help over the years, and you haven't been in a position to be able to do it.
I didn't have the bandwidth personally.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of times people were also reaching out to me. And even if I had an interest, it sort of, they were aligned with the company, Abingdon, for instance. And that doesn't always mean that, you know, just because I may like a project and I'd like to see it move forward and I'd like to help it, maybe I'd like to direct it, doesn't mean exactly that I'm ready to program it in my theater company.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. So the asks were for you as the artistic director of Abingdon. Now I understand.
Some of them, yeah, certainly a lot of them come in. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't make that connection. Of course, that makes perfect sense. JB, for you, similar story.
I think very similar to Chad. I worked at Roundabout for years, and I worked at the Nederlanders for years, and I would read all of these submissions. And the truth of it is, if you're looking at companies that big, unless you're backed by CAA or UTA or someone that has a lot of power, you're not going to get your new work workshopped in a way that you're truly supported and nurtured. And it was really my desire.
I think the word you were searching for was meaningful. In a meaningful way.
Yeah, and I think it's to have a collaborative room is really rare, and to have a room of smart actors and directors and producers to help you shape your work can be a really wonderful experience. And I wanted to find a medium that we could provide that for people. And I think Chad and I are both very passionate about the production of new work. And I was getting tired of seeing all of these great plays tossed aside because they didn't have backing behind them.
So I'm going to come back to you guys. I'm going to basically start asking questions that are about the nuts and bolts of the businesses that you are running. Hello, Sherry. I have to stop your video.
Harsh.
Oh well. She seems very nice. I look forward to saying hello to you later. So I want to talk about some of the nuts and bolts of your business. Just the things that people who come to you, we can assume that they don't have your knowledge, and it's not that I want you to tip your hat to them and say this is what we do and how we do it. I think it's helpful for them to know what it is they don't know. So I'm going to start with James, and I'm going to talk about music licensing, and I want you to explain to people why they need music. They need to be aware of music licensing ever so much more than they think they are. I don't think everybody realizes the extent to which there are laws about using existing works. You have to mute people.
Well,
anybody who's not muted, please mute yourself. Okay, sorry. So James, to you.
That's true, Bob. But first, JV and Chad, this sounds great and so needed. So, wow, terrific. Way to go. And in terms of licensing, back to your question, Bob, well, it was interesting to me how many friends of mine were putting together musicals and saying, well, we're going to use this song and we're going to use that song. I'm actually working on a project now with some script writers who are trying to use over 100 well-known songs in their show. And I don't think they realize that they have to I didn't think they realized until we spoke that they were going to have to pay royalties on these 100 songs. Maybe they could get away with it once, but it wasn't going to happen. I was working on a project this morning where I noticed that in the script, it said that they were using a soundbite from a TV theme song. And I pointed out, you're going to have to get the rights to use that. It wouldn't have to be in the music royalty department. It would actually have to be in the sync department. It's very complicated. I mean, when people create work, they expect to be paid for it, and there are laws in place. Once you realize how it works, it's actually quite simple. The business has been working in the same way for many, many, many years. Basically, book writers get 2% of the royalty, music writers get 2%, and lyricists get 2% of the box office. That's 6% of the off the top of the box office. There are flat fees too.
So let's talk about that. People think that there's a magic rule that if you only use a certain number of measures of a song, you don't have to worry about licensing. Would you like to?
Yeah, that's not true.
Okay, we'll start with that's not true.
Again, I'm working on a project right now where I'm trying to create a different system for this particular project because they're using songs. Some of them are under 30 seconds, some of them are between 30 seconds and a minute, and some are the complete songs. And I'm trying to work out a deal for them where they pay different amounts for each of the usages. And that's actually working out very well because generally it's on a most favorable nation basis where everybody splits up the songs equally. But because of the nature of this show and the usages, it is going to be a higher royalty for whoever produces the show. It's probably going to be a 6% royalty going towards music and lyrics.
So I want to state this for everybody. It's not just a question of you want to have somebody sing a song in your show. It's even if they quote from a song in your show, they sing like two measures of it. You still need to have get the rights to it.
I'm working on a straight play now where the person just occasionally sings a song, and it came up immediately when the play was submitted somewhere.
We had a play submitted to us for a True Speak benefit this year, and one of the climactic moments was involved with one of the characters singing "Respect." It's like, really, really.
I actually had to license that song this year.
Well, I said that we can look into licensing. We were willing to look into how much it would cost, but the producer and the director worked with the writer, and they came up with an alternate ending that didn't require the song, and it was fabulous. It just was a terrific ending. It probably was as good, if not better, than what the writer had originally wanted.
Oh wow, fantastic!
And it did involve a song. So the other thing that people think is that, if I play music in the theater when people are coming in, I don't have to license that.
Well, depends on if the theater has a pro license through ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. It depends. It depends. If it seems like it's part of the show, then that's questionable. If they're just playing music in their lobby, and they have a license through ASCAP and BMI or CSAC, depending on the show or the songs.
My understanding is that most theaters don't have that license. There are cabaret spaces are all fine. There's no problem with cabaret spaces. They all have the BMI and ASCAP licenses.
There's actually something that I recently learned, though, that really blew my mind, is that there's actual laws in place about doing arrangements of songs. So because I was clearing the rights for a show that was happening in a concert situation, and when I said she's having her own arrangements done, I was told that I needed to look at this law, and I discovered that indeed all of Las Vegas is going to have to close down tomorrow. But no, I think people get away with it, but it is questionable. It is kind of on the edge.
Shuri Friedman points out that the Dramatists Guild says that you can speak a song title, not sing it. Is that right? Is that right to the best of your knowledge? I know that you can speak it. I
think you could. It depends on the usage of it. It really does depend on the usage of it. If you say it, if you're saying, I was born in 1956 and Rock Around the Clock was that year, I think you could say Rock Around the Clock.
Yeah.
But I know if you're going to start quoting the lyrics from Rock Around the Clock, you can't.
Okay, so there's two kinds of rights. Are you up on that right now? What is it called? It's major rights and minor rights. I forget what it's called.
Grand performance rights, first class rights, and I think of them as first class rights and second class rights. They sometimes still call it grand performance rights. They're all kind of grand performance rights. In the music business, they think of people who use songs in the theater as asking for grand performance rights.
Okay.
And then
So-
they want to know, is this for a first class production, like a Broadway show that wants to have some kind of agreement that if the show does go on, these songs are going to be licensable for the life of that show and the tour and international companies. There's then non-first class rights, which cover off-Broadway and regional theaters, community theaters, et cetera, schools.
And the amount that you're going to pay does have something to do with the size of the audience and how many people are seeing it. Is that true, or how do they
Yeah, no, it's
determine?
really all based on ticket sales. You can create a flat fee. I tried to, for most of the non-first class rights, I more often than not try to negotiate a flat fee clause, so it's possible for shows to be done in a community theater or in a church without having to go back to getting all the licenses in place. One of the other things that I've tried to now include in all the licenses, Chad, you'll understand this. As soon as the pandemic happened, everybody wanted to put their shows on the internet. And of course you couldn't. The show I was working on at the Fifth Avenue had done its dress rehearsal, but then it closed down. You can just imagine how much money that show lost for the Fifth Avenue Theater because they couldn't do that show. And we tried to quickly get the rights to show the archive tape that they had taped at the dress rehearsal, and it was impossible. So I try to include now in licenses an agreement that under certain circumstances, we have the rights already to do an internet presentation of the show, streaming of the show, but very restricted with passwords. Chad knows more about that than I do. But it's restricted, but it's already in the contract that if something comes up, we can indeed do this. We can continue to do this show online.
So I'm going to ask the room right now before I move back to JV and Chad. Do you have any questions about music licensing that you'd like to ask, or anything that you'd like to say? Your hand raise in your reaction window would be very useful for this, but you can put something into the chat right now and I'll look for it. And if not, we'll just move on. So everybody's all set with music licensing, and Jamie, tell everybody the name of your company and how to reach you.
30 Saints Music Licensing.
30 Saints.
I'll put it in the chat rather than just say it. I see there's a question about public domain. Well, there are sites on the internet where you can check that. You can also check ASCAP and BMI and CSAC for that. I will tell you, often people will do a song that they believe is in the public. Again, this just came up. Someone was, what song was it? Precious Memories, which is basically like a hymn. And it is a public domain piece, but they were doing the arrangement that Emmylou Harris does. And it immediately brought up a red flag because that is actually copyrighted. I'm actually trying to get the rights to the Big Rock Candy Mountain now, which turns out to be a public domain song. But if you want to do the version Burl Ives did, those lyrics are copyrighted.
Okay, so that
Hey, Bob, can I ask a question?
Yeah, who is this?
Can I ask James a question? This is
Joel.
Joel
Yeah,
Krantz.
Joel. Okay, Joel.
Yeah, hi, James.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. So the music license you're talking about, is this only for well-known established songs, or is there an avenue here for people like me who are songwriters and are looking to get their songs out in the world, but they're not things that people would come to you looking for?
These are published songs, Joel. So it's basically
These are published songs.
You're going through
Published
publishers.
songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not an avenue for new songs.
No.
No.
I mean, Joel, if you wrote the song, you can give it away or you can sell it. It's up to you. There's no rules about that.
If you are right.
Although there is an odd little thing that goes on, like with publishers. If you get the rights from the writer and the publisher owns the rights, you don't necessarily have the rights. You have to actually get it cleared by the publisher. I
Well,
believe
you share it. The publishers do have to ask. It depends on the agreement they have with the writer, but the publisher does often have to ask the writer if it's okay to, because someone like Joni Mitchell is not going to allow you to use a song unless she says yes or no.
Well, yeah, I was referring to the opposite, which is when somebody actually meets the writer and gets permission to use their song, and it's published. I think you actually have to still
Well,
get permission.
the thing I would say to Joel, though, just to watch out for, is that if you are going to give your song to somebody to use at a show, make sure that you personally get a license, because you do want to get paid in the future. You don't want your song to disappear. So if somebody is using your song, you should be getting a license. And that is something I could help you with. Because it's interesting, some people write shows that have, I wrote Nightclub Confidential, 50% well-known songs, 50% original songs. All those original songs, though, are now licensed as part of the Nightclub Confidential of that show.
Arlene Corsano, did you want to ask him a question?
Yeah, back in the 50s, and I guess before, I don't know when it happened, that arrangements became a copywritten, but they weren't copywritten. I think it was Laverne Baker or Ruth Brown, because they were getting a lot of their covers. Are those copywritten now? Did that go backwards? So, like if you used an arrangement that was in 1950s before they.
Some of them are still under copyright. Some of them are. Some of them have let that lapse because the families didn't realize. That's why I have to sometimes search up these families and find out, like, who owns this now? Do you own it? Because they are actually due money.
Oh no, I don't mean that. I mean the arrangements. The songs were from back to 1927 or something, when the
You're saying, like, if Laverne
I'm saying the
Baker,
arrangement.
Bailey, won't you please come home?
No, I'm saying the arrangement of a song.
Right.
So
Her arrangement of a song like After the Ball. If I'm just picking that out, I don't know if she sang that song, but if it's possible, it's owned by a publisher. It's possible.
well, the song is owned by a publisher, but I know the arrangement wasn't.
Okay, so
Because somebody
let me just stop this for a second. Basically, what it boils down to is anytime you want to use music, research it, find out who owns the rights, find out if it's available or not.
I know that.
You're basically telling us that the arrangements are not copyrighted.
They weren't. Now they are, but that happened in 1960, 1955, I don't know, because somebody went to Congress to say this wasn't right, because people were the cover records were the same arrangements. People were using the same arrangements. And I think it was Laverne Baker. And she, lost a lot of money. People were copying the arrangements, the musical arrangements, and even her singing style. So it wasn't back then. And I know.
I want to move on because I want to get to Shannon.
Okay,
The basic takeaway.
Okay.
The basic takeaway is you need to research it. If you want to use it, research it. Find out who owns the rights. Find out if the arrangement is copyrighted or not. You don't necessarily know these things. James is not going to know.
No.
There's a thousand songs.
No, I'm sorry. I know that because I've gotten rights. I've dealt with it myself in many times. So I know that. I didn't know about the arrangements in the 1950s, since a lot of the songs I use are from the 1950s, and I didn't know if you could use their same arrangement.
I think what I'm saying still applies.
No,
Why are you fighting with me?
it didn't. I'm just telling you, it didn't in the 1950s. It's a question.
But we're not in the 1950s. I'm giving advice to people in 2022.
Yeah, did it go back? That's what I just.
The publisher's contention is that you can do the song as it is printed on the sheet music. That is the arrangement. Any alteration of that, the publishers believe, needs to be cleared through them or through the person who owns the arrangement. And if you make a new arrangement, they own it. So if you want to copyright Laverne Baker's arrangement or a different arrangement that isn't copyrighted, it still would revert back to the publisher. That's what they contend. You could go to court over it. I'm not.
And the other thing about taking a chance on using stuff, if you're doing one performance, probably you can get away with it, because the one thing that will happen if you use songs without the rights is you're going to get a cease and desist. So you've already ceased and you've already desisted. So
if you've ever done Always Patsy, you've gotten one of those. So
I'm gonna move to JB and Chad, because I want to leave time, because the elements of the showcase code of the 29-hour read are numerous, and it's a big conversation. So I do want you guys to talk a little bit about what are the things that you help people with, and what is it that they should know going into this, into a 29-hour read. First of all, define. Let's just do the basics. Define the 29-hour read for them, if you can. If you can, I will.
Chad, I know you have to leave, so do you want to do a quick?
Well, I will also just say to everyone that I'm sorry that I have to duck out early. However, that's why there's two of us. So I'll have to, Bob, I let you know this, but you might not have seen that.
I didn't see it.
That's okay. But I wanted to hear what Jamie has to say. So it's a win-win for me. And there's two of us for the exact reason. But 29-hour reading, for those of you who don't know, really does have just the basics as the name exists. You can only rehearse for 29 hours. That also includes the performance, whatever that is. You can't, some details, you can't, charge for a ticket. So you can't have a 29-hour reading contract and charge a ticket price. There's lots of sort of details, pretty standard information, not terribly complicated in my opinion anyway, but those people who don't know those things, we would be able to help you with those details and make a schedule that reflects a 29-hour reading, and so on.
The thing that's sort of odd and counterintuitive is, if you do a showcase, you're limited to 99 seats. If you do a reading, you're not limited in terms of your seats. You are limited in terms of charging anything. You can't charge anything. And there is Equity has what is it that they require you to pay actors?
It is I believe it's changed. Equity changes every other day. Sorry, I'm saying that out loud.
That's true.
But it is currently a transportation stipend. And that can mean, that can really reflect whatever you decide what that is. So I've seen it happen with $125 travel stipend down to a $25 travel stipend. So it's really whatever you and your company agree upon and what Equity accepts.
In general, but basically, when you apply for a 29-hour read, I think you have to let them know. You have to give them some sort of information. I forget. I haven't applied for them for one.
It's a simple worksheet. They literally just call it a 29-hour Equity worksheet, and it's a one-sheeter that you fill out with all this information. I've never had trouble with this arrangement with Equity. And
basically, my understanding has always been, or the way I've done it is, transportation is how much it costs by public transportation to and from a rehearsal and to and from the performances. And if you add it up, it winds up being $25. But nobody pays. I want everybody in this room to know that nobody pays $25. It's usually, we usually try for 100 or more, just to show our gratitude to the actors for the time and work that they're putting into it.
And that's a conversation, just to follow up on that, Bob, that's something that I think that me and JV bring to the table, for instance, so that we could say to someone, listen, if you're really wanting the quality actors that you need to help develop this play, you really need to write that into the budget. And those are the kind of conversations with our years of history that we want to be able to share that information, so people don't come, they're not delusional, for what it actually takes to really develop the work that you want to present to houses and ADs and general managers and company managers and everybody who you want to see your work.
Also, to state the obvious, if somebody is not able to get to your rehearsals or to performances by public transportation, they submit to you a bill for how much their transportation actually cost, and you make sure that they're covered. So all Equity is saying is, what it really costs them to get to and from. But in their hearts, they don't mean that. In their hearts, they're hoping that you're going to be more generous.
Right.
I'm trying to think what else. There is no budgetary limit on a reading, oddly enough. The rules of the showcase code are just crazy.
Well, and I think, Bob, that's the again the thing that Chad and I are trying to help with, because you could do it for $5,000, or you could do it for $25,000, or you can do it for somewhere in between. And it depends on ultimately what you want to get out of the 29 hours. You probably want to spend more money if it's ultimately going to be an industry presentation and you're inviting producers. If it's a small workshop production where you want to hear and work on the play for the first time, you don't have to worry about that. So you might be able to go a little bit cheaper. We're negotiating with some people right now who want to use sound and microphones and do a huge industry presentation, and that's adding a hefty sum to the budget. But not always necessary. And I think, again, what Chad and I bring to the table are to help guide you. What do you want to get out of this reading? And then we can help figure out what it is that we can do to make it happen.
You both are the experts at this.
What was it? What did you just say, Jamie?
I said they're both expert at this.
Well, Chad's been doing this for 20 years. I just graduated.
I wish I could say that.
Just so you know, we're actually True is planning to do a workshop on budgeting. So what things cost, and we're going to do that probably in August. And half the day is going to be dealing with small productions and developmental steps, and the other half is going to be dealing with commercial productions. So do you want to put on your general manager hat a little bit and talk about what are good ways for people to think in terms of their shows and what they need in a reading, and why they would spend? I'd say 3,000 would be the bottom. Why they would spend 3,000 or why they would spend 30,000? How that money changes? Can you give them a little idea about that?
Sure. I mean, if you're in New York, the majority of your budget is going to go to space rental right away, right, Chad? Would you agree? And then the second biggest budget piece, as we were just talking about, Bob, is your actors. We encourage that we pay the actors a livable wage, more than a travel stipend, because there's the hope that if the play moves on, if the musical moves on, that the people who do the initial readings stay with it. I directed the first 29-hour reading of the Britney Spears musical 5 years ago, and there are still 5 people in that are going to come to Broadway with it this fall. So the hope of the developmental process is that you get to stay with the show through the whole thing. And then you pay your director, stage managers if you need them. Chad is very generous and insists on coffee and food for the actors, which is always appreciated by everyone. And again, if you're doing an industry presentation, you probably need microphones. You probably need Sherry, good question. The playwright is usually one of the people who is funding this endeavor because it's a workshop for them. Right.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get paid, if you want to build that into your budget, basically it's just I guess you're not necessarily using just your own money. So yeah, you might be raising money, so you might be able to pull something out for yourself. But I think that in a reading situation, if I were doing a reading of my play, I'd just be happy to get it up there. It's developmental. I know that I've spent a year or two, or in my case, 5 years, writing the play, but I'm still eager to hear it up on its feet, and I'm not really. It doesn't really matter to me about getting paid for a reading. I don't know. I guess everybody just has to make their own decision about that.
I don't know of a situation where the writer ever gets paid for a situation like this, even when I was producing for Nederlanders or things like that. That the whole ultimately, yes, but at this stage of the game, no.
I know writers get defensive about this and say everybody else is getting paid. Why don't I get paid? And but you're the one person that's really solidly attached to the work, and so whatever happens to the work and whatever value is built into the work through the developmental process and through the productions, you're going to benefit from it. So I think it's a worthy investment, just getting your work up there. And I know that, I don't know what the Dramatists Guild says these days, but I know that I've had writers yell at me about this. So you can yell at me again, it's fine. So what is it you would tell somebody who wants to do a staged reading of their work when they come to you, in terms of what can their expectations be? I mean, you talked about an industry read. What are different reasons for doing a developmental reading?
I think a little bit of that I got from the past three days this week is that, a lot of playwrights, it's by the time they send off a play to me or JV or to anyone maybe on this call, they ideally think their play is done. And they may have been surrounding themselves with people who think their play is done as well. And they might not be getting the same reaction that they think they deserve. So if you're willing to send your play to somebody with 40 years of combined expertise to go in and ask the hard questions and do the table work, and that's what we did for 3 days. And now we have a playwright who has come out with, she had a good play, now she has a way better play that she's incredibly happy with. So not only did we get to go in and work through the text, but JV also was at the helm of the piece. He cast the piece. So the playwright really heard her words and her vision out loud for the first time. And now that what she got in those 3 days is if I may tip our hat for a moment, was incredibly forward thinking for herself, if you will. And she's going to have a much better product at the end of the day. And she's incredibly happy. And we were able to do that in a very tight world. When you come to us, we also can say, don't go to Pearl Studios. I know this studio in Queens, RWS. It's half the price and way better. Things that people just may not know because this is not their full-time job like it is for us.
Donald wants to know whether you attend readings when invited, and how often do you attend other people's readings?
Constantly, I think.
Constantly. Yeah, I suspected as much. Larry has some very specific information woven together with question.
I can answer. Larry, there's no official contract, so there is no right of first refusal for anyone, including your director. Because it's a reading, no one is guaranteed to move on with the project after you leave.
It all depends on the agreement. If you have a director you want to work with, and that director says, I want a letter of agreement, then you're tied in. Normally, no. So people can ask for anything. I mean, everything's about agreements. It's everybody in this room. Don't do anything without at least a letter of agreement or some form of contract. If you spell out the terms in writing on a piece of paper, you can go back to that and you say, "See, this is what I told you. This is what I told you." I mean, the other thing is, it's so important at the beginning of any creative relationship that everyone be honest about their expectations. If you bring a director on board for a reading, and that director is expecting, and you're expecting the director to give you dramaturgical input, to give you some guidance, and in addition to just moving people around behind music stands and helping them find their characters, if you're expecting some input from him dramaturgically about what works and what doesn't work, the director really should let you know whether he's giving that to you for free or not. I feel he should be, but that may not be his expectation or his understanding.
And I think what's important, Bob, about what you're saying is you might be at a stage where you don't even want to get up from the table all the way to the point where you do want to stage the reading a little bit. And again, that depends on where you are with the work. And you might get to the end of a 29-hour reading with a creative team and say, we don't want to work with any of you ever again as a writer or as a director. So you want to be really careful about any agreements before going in.
That changes once you go to the next step, which is the equity showcase.
That is correct.
Then there are expectations built into the agreement.
Correct.
Bob, sadly, I have got to run to my other engagement, but JV is here to represent and answer more questions. So thank you.
This isn't you leaving all that early. This is great.
Oh, okay.
We had you all this. I'm just grateful for the time. I'm so glad we had this time together.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for listening, and please reach out, and I look forward to seeing you all again.
Hi, Chad.
I'm
All right.
not asking people to come into the room.
Bye,
Thank you,
Chad.
guys.
Bye, Chad.
Okay.
Maybe.
Bye, Chad. Good to see you. So now tell us what you really think of him, JP.
I love him. I hate it, but I do. He's wonderful.
Of course he is. There was another question. What is the approximate range of pay for a director for a 29-hour read? That's a big up in the air.
It is a big question. So
Yeah.
one of the shows that we're working on right now, the director has decided not to take a fee because he's going to be with it for the long run.
Because he has an agreement.
He doesn't have an official agreement, but he's been helping. I know, but that's not my job. That's what he does with the writer. So I think anywhere between, you can start as low as 250, you can go up to 500, you can go up to 1,000. It really depends on your budget, but I think you should probably.
And just so you know, I know specifically of some people that have asked for $2,000 or $2,500 for a reading, and I think it's disproportionate to the budget of what you're spending for a reading. I don't agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, Jerry Mitchell's going to get more for a 29-hour reading than I'm going to get for a 29-hour reading, right? But how
did you know who I was talking about?
And I might have replaced him one or two times directing a reading.
Okay. So the range of pay is, Janet, is, I agree with JV. I wouldn't go under 250. I think it's a very bare minimum. Yeah, I don't know. It's you talk it over.
It's a lot. It's intense. The director and the writer wind up doing the most work in the room, so I think you want to pay them more than you're paying the actors. I think $500 for a couple of hours of time is nice. In
the staged reading agreement, there is no favored nations clause.
I believe that's true. Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's when you get to a showcase where the director is really putting in 10 times the amount of work as any actor, equity's assumption is that you're paying everybody the same amount, and
correct.
That's virtually impossible. I don't think it can ever happen that way. I'm going to say this. Equity's going to hear me say this. I'm going to get in trouble. But the directors normally, I think what you do is you basically, when you think of the director's work, the director's job, you can divide it into several different aspects of it. I put a lot of the budget money into what I call pre-production, because the director is involved with the project even before we start auditioning.
Correct.
So, any other questions about the reading? Let's see what we have in here.
Casting directors. What we could hire a casting director. My first job has been in casting, and I've been doing it for 20 years. So that's one of the services we provide in our fee. But we can also hire outside if you'd like.
Are you still involved in casting?
I'm not an active casting director, but I work on a lot of productions, and so I'm a consultant on a lot of things. But
okay.
It's not my joy, but I can do it.
Michelle wants to know if you actually would share your website with everybody,
Oh,
both of you.
Sure.
Price breakdown. I don't know. Are you comfortable? Do you have anything set at this point? Or
we don't have rates set because it really depends on. It's something that we will work out with you. That we'll have a call and we'll have a chat. And again, I think
A
It
lot
depends
of
on
it,
what you want to get out of the reading and what the purpose is. So I think you're looking at, again, between, what did you say, Bob? You said like $3,000, maybe at the lower end, up to 25,000. I think the one we produced this week, we spent, I think we spent about $6,000, and that was 6 actors and a dramaturg. And I did all the casting and stage management stuff myself.
does that help, Michelle? I assume that she's okay with that. So websites we're gonna get soon. Anybody else have any questions that you want to put into the chat? Did I miss anybody? So, JV, you're going to get invited by me to do a couple of workshops that are coming up, because we do something called Essentials of Self-Producing, and one of the things that we get involved in that is what things cost. And I know what I wanted to say before. You had sort of quickly gone over the table read. People like to know structurally what are the steps of development, and I always like to tell people that this first step is the table read.
Correct.
So in this situation, though, you've already been brought on for the reading itself with the public, but you're guiding them through the table read, because the first time that you sit down at the table with actors, which is why they call it a table read, you're going to hear it for the first time theoretically, and you're going to hear things, and you're going to either long to change things or cry or be ecstatically happy. It's unusual to be ecstatically happy at a first table read. You may want to look into that if you're feeling that way.
Well, I'll tell you, Bob, this is a good example. This week we spent 2.5 days at the table, and then for just the final read through, we sat people at music stands so that it could open up in terms of, it felt very cinematic because we were all talking at a table and we were very personal. And I said, okay, just for the last read through before we end the day, what happens if we all create a little space and find out if the language is in fact theatrical too? So this really was a table read. It was my first time with the writer. We had been talking on and off for 2 months about the play, but this was her first time hearing this version of it out loud with professional actors. So with this performance, this version of it, we were at the table read section of the workshop. That was our goal.
And just for the record, writers, when your show is just out of the typewriter or computer or whatever it is, and you haven't had anything happen with it, it may not be time for you to go ask JV and Chad. You can actually put together your own table read, and you can learn
Correct.
about things, and you have friends, and you can talk about it. Table reads are very, very useful, and sometimes people jump over that step, and I don't think they should.
Great.
So I think, unless there's other questions from the room, let's see. Eric is pointing out that his pre-production designation is dramaturgy. Yeah, it is. I mean, sure, there could be a fee in there for dramaturgy for your director.
Any good director should also be a good dramaturg.
Yeah, I do believe that. I mean, do you guys agree? I mean, you as directors, because you both guys have an incredible amount of experience under your belts, you're just naturally going to want to be helping the writer shape their show and make things, let them know what's not working and what is working, or where
I don't know what your job is if you're not doing that.
Yeah, I know. But then you have the situation where a director says, "Okay, I've been doing dramaturgy for you. I want another fee for dramaturgy," and that's why you have the conversation.
Yes.
Part of the job.
Yes.
I think we all agree that it's part of the job. You will meet directors who will not agree with that.
Yeah.
You can work with them if you want.
Sherry, steps of development. I think you do the table read. I think then you do a 29-hour reading. And then I think you do another 29-hour reading.
Probably.
And you keep doing that until you're ready to go to the showcase level.
And your first 29-hour reading may just be for friends and associates. You may want to save your industry reading for when you feel really
ready.
Because if you are going to get industry in to see your show and it's too early, it's almost impossible to get them back.
Back.
You can't just send them an email and say, oh, but we made all the changes. We want you to come back and see it. Not going to happen.
No.
So make
They
sure
won't.
you're ready before you invite industry. Do you help people get industry, JV and Chad? Are you in a position to actually help people bring in industry?
Yes, that is one of the things we would offer at a higher level packaging.
Okay. And as Jane Dubin says, you never get a second chance to make a first impression.
True, Jane. It's
Always
very
true.
true.
Always true.
Brilliant.
So if there are any other questions, please, guys, ask them before I do my wind up. Okay. So, JV, thank you for being with us. It's great meeting you.
What a pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
I look forward to seeing you and maybe working with you in ways in the future. And I'm going to say it, Jamie, because I know you as Jamie for 25, 30, 40 years now.
Go for it. Go for it.
So Jamie, always a pleasure to see you. Always happy to have you in one of these discussions. If people have any more questions about licensing, especially last minute questions, which always happens. Oh, wait. After the 29-hour reading for Friends, is the next step a showcase or a 29-hour reading for industry? I'd say 29-hour reading for industry. It depends on.
It depends on how much work you've done on the show.
If you think the show is ready.
There's no set path, really. It's between you and your director and your producers at that point. What do you want to do?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready? And
we'll help you with that.
And pass it by people other than your mother.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's it, guys. Jamie and JV and Chad, who had to leave a little earlier. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful for the generosity of giving time to us and spending some time with True. I'm going to go say.
Good to be with you, JV. Nice to actually finally meet you.
Yes, same. Thank you so much for the time, Bob. I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Before I do that, I want to say to my viewers, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being part of True. If you're watching us on YouTube, consider being part of the room. Email me at trunltd@aol.com. trunltd@aol.com. And yeah, the old dude has an AOL account. Yeah. Okay. And we do this for free, and everybody here knows the pitch. Basically, it's pay what you can, and a lot of people come for free, and we're delighted to have you. If you can give us some money, we have bills to pay, and it would help us. So please go to trudonate.com. That's trudonate.com. And Jane has put that in the chat as well. And that's it, guys. And I hope you'll come back next week and join us when we meet Electrocast. No, it's IFT.com, International Indie Film and Theater Network.com. It's a network for everybody's talking hybrid right now. It's like, what do we do? Like we're leaving Zoom, we're going into live, but I kind of like Zoom and I want to do stuff in Zoom. IFT Network is a great place for you to actually find ways of placing your material online and for video viewing, for streaming. And these guys have a very special setup, and it's interesting, and come meet them. It's Jay Cruz and his crew. So see you next week, hopefully. And that's it for today, everyone. Thank you.